Just in moments ago, as the White House now says that President Biden is going to leave a dinner with fellow G7 leaders early because he's going back to his hotel to get an update from his team on the debt limit negotiations. The crisis back in Washington has been overshadowing Biden's crucial foreign trip during a critical moment in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We're now learning also this morning that Ukrainian President Zelensky is also going to Japan to meet face-to-face with President Biden and the other G7 leaders. Sources tell CNN he's going to arrive Saturday evening and meet with them on Sunday. Just this morning, the G7 leaders put out a statement vowing to support Ukraine against Russia's brutal invasion for, quote, as long as it takes. And we're told a big topic of discussion will be whether or not to send those F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine's Air Force to potentially help them turn the tide in this war. Sources say the U.S. is now signaling it will not block U.S. allies from exporting them.
Zelensky has been on a whirlwind of diplomatic missions across Europe. He just arrived in Saudi Arabia to meet with the Arab League. He has been pushing allies to send more weapons as his troops prepare for a crucial counteroffensive. One of Zelensky's biggest demands has been those F-16 fighter jets. Nick Robertson is live on the ground in eastern Ukraine, not far from the front lines. Nick, glad to have you with us. His trip, the fact that he's going in person, he's not joining them, remotely. He's going because he thinks it's crucial to be face-to-face with President Biden, for F-16s, I'm sure, but also with these other European leaders.
Yeah, we know the F-16s are going to be, top of the agenda for Zelensky because it has been for some time. He knows he's beginning to win the argument that he's won over some of those European leaders. He was meeting with them in their capitals earlier in the week. Those leaders met in Iceland a couple of days ago, and there they came up with a plan to help get Ukrainian fighter pilots trained for the F-16, to help the Ukrainians figure out how to purchase F-16s. Zelensky's advisors are saying it's extremely important for him to be there in person, to explain their thinking, to put forward their proposals, to put forward their arguments, and really give the leaders the best and most accurate, up-to-date sense of what's happening in the war here in Ukraine. And for Zelensky, that is quite simply going to come out with the need to push for more ammunition and the need to get those fighter jets. And he thinks best way to get this done for him, be there in person, make the case face-to-face.
Yeah, it's a powerful argument to make. But before he gets to Japan, he's just landed in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, Nick. And obviously, there are some very wealthy Gulf state leaders there that have provided a substantial amount of assistance to Ukraine. What's the expectation for this stop before he gets to that G7 meeting?
Yeah, he's expected to have a bilateral with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Look, the Crown Prince of Saudi, perhaps not well liked on some aspects on the world stage, but he has been hugely busy behind the scenes trying to help with things like prisoner releases, prisoner exchanges, and this will be a topic of conversation for Zelensky, but he'll also talk about the Muslims in Ukraine, the Crimean Tatars who are facing political oppression in Crimea under the Russians. That will be a topic of discussion. But what Zelensky recognizes is, sorry, that's a air raid warning just being cleared here. They come in quite often. What Zelensky will be talking about will be the plight of the Tatars in Crimea under Russian rule. But also, he recognizes that the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman wants to play a role in stabilizing and a potential peace deal down the road. So that will be part of the conversation there as well. The foreign minister of Saudi was in Kyiv a couple of months ago talking about support that the country can give. Zelensky understands as well that MBS has a relationship with Putin, can get in Putin's mindset. There's a lot that Zelensky can get out of this meeting.
Nick, thank you for being there for us on both those fronts.
CNN's Jumana Karachi joins us now live from Istanbul to discuss. Jumana, what struck you about what we've just heard from President Zelensky?
Well, it's very interesting, Bianca. It's a pretty bold move by the Ukrainian president to show up in a region that has, for the most part, tried to stay out of the Ukrainian war, that has really tried to stay on the fence. This is a region where you have countries with very close ties as well to Russia, economic and military ties. And he's really trying to reach out to these countries. Of course, with all the talk about the spring offensive in the works right now, it does appear that he is trying to reach out to these countries that have really tried to stay out of it for the most part. With Saudi Arabia, for example, they have really tried to emerge as a mediator in this region, whether it is brokering a prisoner swap deal a few months ago between Ukraine and Russia, or whether it is other conflicts in this region. So you see President Zelensky really trying to reach out to them, talking about Muslim Ukrainians who are victims of the oppression and the aggression, and really trying to speak to this region, giving them examples of what Ukrainians are going through, saying that you would not accept foreigners taking away your children, foreigners taking your land, invading your country, really trying to connect with this region that is economically important, and of course a very, very interesting time to also be at this summit, Bianca, and doing this at a time where all eyes were already on this Arab League leaders meeting, because Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian president, who for more than a decade now has been a pariah on the international stage, has been brought back into the regional and Arab fold. He was making his appearance today at this summit. We have seen him shaking hands with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, all smiles, being welcomed with handshakes and red carpets to this summit. So all eyes were on that, and it's going to be very interesting to see both President Zelensky and Bashar al-Assad at this summit, which we haven't actually seen just yet, because, over the past year or so, Bianca, I've been speaking to a lot of Syrians who see a lot of parallels between what they have gone through over the past decade, of course, because Russia backed President Assad. It is the reason he survived the civil war in his country. It is the reason why he is emerged pretty much victorious in this war, and so many Syrians feel that they are the victims of that Russian support for President Assad, and they have always drawn these similarities between Russia and Ukraine, saying if the world had stopped Russia in Syria, they believe Ukraine wouldn't have happened.
It is fascinating to see that clash of geopolitical alignment really coming to the fore at this summit, and the Arab League deciding that engagement is the way forward with Bashar al-Assad, unlike most Western countries. Jumana Karache, live in Istanbul, thank you so much. Following his stop in Saudi Arabia, officials say that President Zelensky is expected to head to Japan for an in-person visit to the G7 summit. It comes as G7 leaders were set to discuss the possibility of fighter jets for Ukraine at their gathering in Hiroshima. Sources telling CNN that the Biden administration has signaled to European allies that it would allow them to export US-made F-16 jets to Kyiv.